The Theatre of Blood is one of the most intimidating pieces of content in Old School RuneScape. Most players look at it and think it's way out of their league, but it really doesn't have to be. Today, I'll show you why the Theatre of Blood isn't nearly as scary as it looks, and the simplest, no-nonsense information you need to clear your first normal mode raid. The best way to use this guide is to watch it all the way through first, and then come back and play along during a second rewatch when you're actually preparing to send the raid. The real reward at ToB is the joy of sending the best raid in the game with your boys, but if that doesn't convince you, the loot here is nuts. You can average around 12 mil per hour here once you get comfortable. The Xarpus P2 is the single most expensive drop in the game right now. The other uniques are still decent, and even the common loot is nothing to complain about. ToB looks super complicated, because getting through Theatre of Blood with maximum efficiency and zero mistakes is complicated. But luckily, that's not what we're doing today. To keep things simple, there are 3 roles: melee, range, and mage. I'd recommend learning this as a trio. We can use one combined gear setup for both melee and ranged. The mage role is a bit more advanced. It involves some tick-perfect freezes and requires more gear, so you can't bring in as many supplies. This is a role you ideally want an experienced player doing, but if you're going full send with an inexperienced group, it's doable. It just takes some practice. I've said this guide is noob friendly. If you're straight out of Lumbridge, that might be a little bit too newbie. But if you've got the stats, the gear, and 0 KC, I'm sure we can get you through your first raid. It might take a few tries, but anything worth doing requires some persistence and patience. A lot of Theatre of Blood guides will tell you that you need a bunch of expensive spec weapons or hard to get gear, but they don't usually explain why it's important. This is what makes ToB feel so gatekept. You absolutely can learn the Theatre of Blood without most of this stuff. Some of it is genuinely necessary though. Things like defense reduction from the Dragon Warhammer spec make the bosses here so much easier to deal with. The same idea applies to Elite Void Knight equipment. Bringing Elite Void lets you minimize gear switches, focus more on mechanics, and stack up extra supplies to help you survive your first clears. It's also best in slot for ranged here, and it's completely free. If you skip the defense reduction or bring different gear, you're probably going to hit a lot of zeros and make this raid way harder than it needs to be. If you're just running raids with your friends for fun and you're not expecting to get a KC, honestly, wear whatever you already have. But if you want your first few completions to feel smooth, the setup I'm about to show you is the bare minimum you want to aim for. Let's go over the requirements to make this content doable and enjoyable. For your stats, at least 85 plus in all of your combat styles is probably the minimum I would want to jump in with. If you're the mage, 94 is a non-negotiable requirement for Ice Barrage. 77 prayer for rigor, augury, and piety will massively speed things up, and 70 plus agility is nice to have. If you don't have this, we've got a workaround mid-raid that we'll cover when it's relevant. For your gear, start with full void melee, an amulet of fury, a berserker ring imbued, fire cape, god blessing, dragon defender, and a tentacle whip. A normal whip will not suffice. You want a poisoned weapon for your main hand melee. That'll make sense later in the raid. I'm also recommending Arania boots. They make one of the hardest mechanics in the raid basically free. If not, dragon boots will do. In your inventory, bring a simple 3-way range switch, your void range helmet, your best others device, and a toxic blowpipe. You'll also need your best powered stave. I've bought a Trident of the Seas to show you don't need anything too good. For your spec weapons, a Dragon Warhammer is basically essential if you don't want to get brick walled at Xarpus. You can do some clever stuff mixing in BGSs, Ralos, and some other funky stuff, but I recommend just keeping it simple when you're starting out. I'm bringing a Crystal Halberd and Burning Claws. You can get away with just a halberd or just claws, but ideally you want both. We'll be covering the best times to use both of these specs. I've also bought some double-hitting Glacial Tomotlis. These are super useful in a couple of places. Don't forget your Salve Amulet Enchanted, crucial for Bloat. Stock up on these by mining them at the Haunted Mine and enchanting them with Tarn's Book. You will be going through hundreds when you start tobbing with the big boys. A single ranged potion, 3 super combats, 8 brews, 4 restores, and 3 anglers should be enough to get you through. If not, there are some restock points throughout the raid. You can pre-pot with all of these too. That's the full setup for the range and melee role. If you are the mage, we're going to be ice barraging, so be on ancients. You need to be able to catch your freezes every time without any chance of splashing. I'm going to give you a foolproof setup that will never miss. It's very similar to our other setup, we're just getting rid of some supplies and our double hit weapons to make some room for some mage switches. We've got a Void Mage helmet, Saradomin God Cloak, an Occult Necklace, an Ancient Ice Scepter and a Book of Darkness. And of course, runes for Ice Barrage in our pouch. This setup will get you a guaranteed freeze if you're using Mystic Vigor or Augury. If you want to do Mage roll here, getting the Scepter and the unlockable prayers is the best way to do it. Royal Titans, Duke and Muspa, the requirements for these unlocks are way easier than ToB, and they're super useful unlocks in the long term. You can do it with different gear, but you'll be spending a lot of GP and bringing in many more switches, reducing your inventory space. I'd also recommend upgrading the Trident of the Seas to a Trident of the Swamp. This isn't going to help with freezing, but it will be useful for the Nylo Room a bit later. If you don't have that gear, there are other options. You can use the wiki page in the description to work out the gear you need to hit that required mage bonus. When you're ready to go, make a group at the notice board outside the theatre. Once you invite players to the group, you can reorder the names. This matters more than you think. Some bosses prioritize attacking the player at the top of the list. Now we're all grouped up, you're ready to enter the theatre and tackle the first boss, the Maiden of Sugadinti. Before you enter Maiden's room, put on protection from magic and keep it on for the entire fight. You'll also want to drop your salve and one anglerfish to make space for your ranged switches. When you run in, everyone should drop a Dragon Warhammer spec, then switch to ranged gear. The person closest to the boss becomes the tank and will take the most damage. You can swap out when someone gets low. You don't want your mage to be closest at any time, so swap this between your range and melee rolls if you need to. Her main attack is a black shadow projectile. Protection from magic halves the damage, but it also reduces your stats, so stay on top of those super restores. This is especially important if you're freezing. You don't want to be caught with your magic reduced to below 94. Having quick access to Ice Barrage is crucial. Everyone will be ranging in this room, but the freezer has a special role. They need to switch to their magic gear and freeze some additional spawns at 70, 50 and 30% health. In between these spawns, Maiden will throw blood splats. They're easier to avoid the further you are away. This is why everyone is using ranged. Range is also the best DPS in this learner setup. If a blood splat hits you, they spawn red orbs that spread more blood across the arena. This is a permanent loop. Standing in blood makes more blood. It can get overwhelming very, very fast. If you reach a point where you have to start killing these, it's probably something to work on. Having the mage freeze them can help take the pressure off. At 70% health, Maiden spawns the first round of red crabs that run towards her. If these reach her, she heals up and her DPS gets increased. If you chose the mage role, listen up. The trick to getting this done smoothly is to freeze the crabs that spawn closest to Maiden first, prioritizing the south side of the arena since those crabs reach the boss first. There are loads of crab spawn variations depending on the group size, but that's not important for your first clears. Getting in, practicing and learning from your mistakes is the best way to learn the mage role. If you freeze correctly, you should notice most of the crabs get stuck in a big clump. The freezer can barrage these down until they're all dead. Everyone else should machine gun down the crabs that aren't in the clump with their blowpipe. Unless you're running in a bigger group with more than one mage, if a crab spawns at the closest north side tile, this crab should not get frozen. Everyone else in the raid should just try and kill it before it reaches the boss. A couple of quick extra tips. If you're the mage, when you're learning, there's no shame in camping mage gear for the entire fight. It's better to catch those freezes than to have the Maiden healed up and hitting big numbers on you and all of your teammates. If you're the range or melee role, camping on the north side of the arena gives the mage space to hit the south freezes and allows you to get the best access to the crab that doesn't get frozen when it spawns. That's pretty much the whole fight. You'll get another wave of crabs at 50% and another wave of crabs at 30%. Catch those freezes, don't stand in the shit on the floor, and DPS Maiden down until she's dead. I know this is just the first boss, but if you made it through this room, you're already doing better than most first-time raiders. Once you get out of Maiden, get that melee gear back on, put on your salve amulet, and eat an anglerfish. You'll want to be healed up nice and big in case you make any mistakes. Bloat can hit hard. Other than at the final boss, the Pestilent Bloat is where most people wipe. It's super easy to make little mistakes here that snowball and wreck your whole team. If you die here, don't let it stress you out. Bloat deaths don't count. To minimize the time you actually have to spend dealing with this boss, one person should go in first, ideally the person with the most experience or confidence, and they will follow Bloat around, staying on the opposite side. Everyone should have protection from ranged on. This starts the fight, but you'll have two players that are nice and safe outside the room. Bloat has two phases, up and down. When he's up, you run away from him whilst he walks around the arena. When he's down, you smash him with your best melee weapon. When he's down, keeping piety up for extra damage is always nice. There are three mechanics you need to deal with: the flies, the hands, and the stomp. To avoid the flies, stay on the opposite side of the pillar from Bloat. Pathing can be pretty wonky here, especially around corners, so walking and taking small clicks whenever possible is the best way to avoid running back around the wrong side directly into Bloat's line of sight. If you ever get too close to Bloat, your whole team gets damaged by the flies. This mechanic is the reason we've got protection from ranged up. To avoid the hands, simply don't stand on the shadows on the floor. A nice tip for avoiding these: hands never strike the same tile twice in a row, so if you've just seen one hit the floor, this tile is safe to run to for a short period. And to avoid the stomp, after Bloat is down and you've done as much DPS as you can, he'll wake up and stomp the floor. You need to be out of his line of sight before he does, or you'll take a huge amount of damage. If you know how to ticky, this is a great place to use it, but if not, don't risk it. If you're worried about running away from Bloat before the stomp attack, you can use your weapon timing to help you. If you really want to maximize the DPS, you can even plan out your specs. On the first round of Bloat going down, you can squeeze in 1 Crystal Halberd spec, 3 whip hits, and then 1 more Crystal Halberd spec, then run away. Every other round, just open with the Burning Claws and switch to the whip for 4 hits. If you're worried about doing this properly or don't have these spec weapons, getting in 5 whip hits and running away is a super safe option. Killing Bloat in 2 downs is the gold standard. As a beginner, it'll likely take you 3, but 4 and 5 down Bloats aren't impossible, especially if people die. Once you clear Bloat, you can drop your Salve Amulet E. We don't need it for the rest of the raid. You'll have some points to spend at the chest at the entrance to the next room. The amount of points you get depends on how many times you've died. If you're in a melee role, especially if you have less than 70 agility, I'd strongly advise buying a stamina potion here. If you have the space, buy a couple of pieces of hard food too, sharks will be fine. If you're short on brews and restores, top them up too. Don't worry if you've got points to spare, there's another chest later on and your points carry over. Drop me a like if you found the video useful so far, and remember to subscribe if you want to see more from me. I've got guides for most bosses in the game out by now, so check them out if there's anything you're trying to learn. I've also got a creator crafted discount code if you want to pimp out your office or gaming space. You can ToB in style with some sweet RuneScape desk mats and LED signs, or you can show off your love for the game on the go with the super cute enamel pins. If you want to pick up anything, use code 10BOOT for 10% off. Once you've filled up your inventory, you're ready for the Nylo Room. There's a wave-based swarm of crabs where you'll stick to 1 combat style each. These will be the roles you picked at the start, and then a boss where you'll need to switch between all 3. Melee roles should be using their double hit weapons, rangers should be using their blowpipe, and the mage should put on their trident with an optional switch to barrage for any big clumps. The crabs are going to attack the 4 pillars at either corner of the arena. You need to make sure these pillars don't fall. Each time one falls, you'll take some big damage, but if all 4 fall, the raid is over. There is so much advanced tech to make this room quick and smooth, but let's keep it simple. Click on a crab that matches your combat style. Grey for melee, green for ranged, and blue for magic. Hit them once, then move on to the next one. Wasting time here is bad. You should prioritize crabs that have aggroed and are attacking other players. Then prioritize the newest crabs entering the room. If you see a pillar getting low, it's okay to focus crabs on that pillar. If you attack a crab with the wrong style, you can no longer deal damage to that crab. Use your offensive prayers at all times in this room and flick on your defensive prayers if something starts attacking you. Be aware that if crabs hang around for too long, they will explode, dealing damage to anyone near them. Don't be afraid to eat your hard food here or even to sip those brews. You can't DPS if you're dead, and if someone goes down in the Nylo Room, you are toast. If you notice that one style is getting swamped, it will usually be melee. You can switch to that style and help out, but in a trio, it shouldn't really be necessary. Clear 31 waves and the Nylo Boss will descend from the ceiling. Now you'll need to start switching. You need to switch prayers and combat style whenever he changes colour. Grey means pray melee and attack with melee. Green means pray ranged and attack with ranged. And blue means pray mage and attack with mage. You can usually get in 2 or 3 hits depending on your weapon. If you don't have your correct prayer up, you will take damage. If you hit the boss with the wrong style, you will take damage. You'll automatically stop attacking the boss whenever he switches colours, so no need to worry about clicking off him. He always starts with melee, so get those claws ready for 2 specs if you've got them, and start with the melee prayer up. Every colour switch should follow the same workflow. Correct prayers, correct weapon, hit boss, any other switches, wait for the change, repeat. Only switching your weapon and getting in some damage is better than switching all of your stuff and never hitting the boss. Repeating that will get you all the way through this fight. It feels like you're fighting your inventory more than it feels like you're fighting the boss. Before you step into Sotetseg, check out these marked tiles and pick one each. You'll need to spread out evenly. You'll also need to decide your spec order. Sotetseg has multiple phases and restores his defense after each reset. He is tanky as fuck without a defense drain, so each phase you'll want to hit him at least once with a Dragon Warhammer spec, ideally twice. There are 3 phases, each separated by the Sotetseg maze puzzle. To keep things simple, I suggest speccing in this order. The mage should spec on the 1st and 2nd phase, the melee should spec on the 2nd and 3rd phase, and the ranger should spec on the 1st and 3rd phase. If you're in a bigger group than a trio, everyone else can just fill in if specs miss. If anything is going to kill you at Sotetseg, it's probably getting PK'd by your guide in the maze. If you're feeling nervous, you can practice this with the maze trainer. I've provided a link in the description. Sot has 3 primary attacks. The red orb is mage, the grey orb is ranged. You want to pray against these 2. Put on your prayer earlier than you think. The timing for these does feel super weird. If you miss one of these, your prayer gets turned off for a couple of seconds. Make sure to turn it back on as soon as you can. You will also get meleeed, and whilst you can pray against it, it's safer to keep praying against the orbs and just tank the melee hits. It can hit for 45, so make sure you eat up if you drop below 45 HP. Simply take a step back, focus on the prayers and brew up. You can't get meleeed if you're not stood next to him. He also has a special attack, the Big Orb. For this one, learners should all gather together on the tile directly in front of Sotetseg. This splits the damage evenly between you. If not, it's pretty much a guaranteed one-hit KO. Tick eating is also an option, just like Bloat Stomp. This is a bit more advanced and risky, but once you get the raid down, it's definitely worth learning how to do. Keep switching those prayers and stacking up for the death ball, and at 66% and 33% health, you'll have to run through the maze. One person will be able to see a path through the maze. They need to run through it first. This will highlight the tile they click on to the other players in the raid. Everyone else just needs to follow the path. For beginners, only use straight line movement. Up, down, left and right. No diagonals, no L shapes. Keep it simple and survive. If you're leading the maze, always click on the first row. Always wait for your team to be ready on the 3rd row, and then do it as fast as you can. Just make sure your player actually reaches the corner before you turn in a different direction. When you get to the end, always click on the last row. Sotetseg has a massive hitbox that you can't walk through, so you can get dragged through dangerous tiles if you don't. So that's it. You've got 3 DPS phases and 2 mazes, and you're ready for the next boss. But before you enter the next room, you'll see another chest by the exit. For the second supply chest, spend all of your points. This is your final chance to restock. If you're not dealing with any filthy Iron Men, communicate with your team. If you've got spare points or extra supplies, grab some for your teammates. Before moving on, aim to have at least 6 brews, 4 restores and 2 hard food. You can also sip your ranged potion and drop it, you won't need it again. A stamina potion is also really helpful for learners. Running out of energy during phase 3 Verzik is a very real way to die. If you leave this chest undersupplied, Verzik will punish you. Spend everything you can. Before entering Xarpus, switch into your melee gear, with your Dragon Warhammer equipped. Everyone needs to pick a corner of the room. This is where you'll start during the phase 2 acid dodge. Make sure you have inventory space for your blowpipe switch. If you don't, when you enter the room, drop a food or potion underneath Xarpus so you can quickly swap gear later. Then get ready for phase 1, the exhumes. You'll notice green skulls spawning on the floor around the arena. Stand on them, that's the entire phase. Spread out evenly in a triangle so you can reach them quickly. If you don't step on the skulls, little orbs will fly into Xarpus and heal him up, which makes the next phase longer and harder. Once the skulls stop spawning, run in and use your Dragon Warhammer specs. Immediately after that, switch to your blowpipe and range gear, then run to the corner you picked earlier. You'll see Xarpus throwing acid towards everyone. When you see it flying towards you, simply step 2 tiles away each time just before it lands. Keep repeating this whilst attacking with the blowpipe. If you run out of space, turn around and walk back the way you came, just 1 tile in front. Try not to run into your teammates' paths. This becomes much more important later when you start raiding with the Giga Chad doing scythe walking everywhere. Keep attacking Xarpus like this until he reaches 25% HP. When the boss gets to 25 HP, he screeches, signaling the start of phase 3. Stop attacking him immediately and switch to your melee gear. You have plenty of time. The acid will stop during this phase. Xarpus will start turning to face different directions. You must only attack him when he's not facing you. If you hit Xarpus whilst he's looking at you in this phase, you are definitely dead. If you stand underneath him at any point, you're also probably dead. The safest method whilst learning is simple. Stand next to him, wait until he looks away, hit him twice with the whip, and then click the ground to stop attacking. Don't try and be fancy yet, just play it safe. It's an easy phase, which also makes it really easy to get complacent and die. Ask me how I know. Once Xarpus is down, make sure to pick up the Dawnbringer staff by the skeleton at the exit before you leave the room. If you've made it this far, you're killing it. I hope you're ready for the hardest part of the raid. When you enter Verzik's arena, check out the tiles I've marked on screen. Drop a brew and a restore just behind one of those tiles either side of Verzik. In a trio, you want to be in a triangle shape around the boss. Someone goes south, someone east, and someone west. Quads can go 2 each side, and groups of 5 do a mix of both. This really helps with the blue lightning mechanic we will cover shortly. Dropping the supplies lets your team know where you're going to be standing, but more importantly, they're there for your team to pick up if you die. And you need to make some space in your inventory for some switches. We will be camping in our melee gear for the entire fight. Listen carefully here. If there is one fight in this entire raid that decides whether you get your first KC, it's this one. When you're ready for phase 1, standing directly in front of her with Pray Mage up lets your team know you're ready to go. Keep that prayer up for the entirety of the phase and spam click the boss when you're ready. Normal weapons do very little damage to Verzik in P1. You need to bring her shield down with the Dawnbringer staff we just picked up. P1 Verzik is all about hiding behind the pillars for Verzik's magic attack and then getting off as many specs with the staff as possible. You can fit in 2 attacks for every one of her blue ball magic attacks. The best way to avoid damage is to run out when Verzik opens her legs for you. When they're all the way in the air, click the boss. Right at the start of the fight, before her first magic attack, you can get 4 attacks off, then run behind the pillar. When you don't have the staff to spec, you'll be using your double hitting melee weapon. To rotate the staff between players, you'll want to drop it in a safe space. I've got this tile marked behind the center of the first pillar on the left hand side of the arena. This is going to be that first safe space. You'll pick up the staff in orb order. That's the list of players on the top left of your screen that you picked at the start. Let's cover how we rotate through this phase from start to finish. The person at the top should start, get off 2 specs, 2 normal hits, and then run behind the pillar and drop the staff. The second person picks it up and waits for the cue. Verzik's legs being at the highest point in the air, specs twice, and then again drops the staff in the safe space. The third person will do the same. Pick up staff, wait, spec again, drop in the safe zone. If you do this right, you'll notice the blue magic attacks hitting the pillars instead of yourselves. When these pillars get to 0, they get destroyed, and when they fall down, you don't want to be near them or you'll get hit for some big damage. You need to move to the next pillar as soon as possible. Usually you'll get her down by pillar 2 or 3. You'll want to rotate around the pillars in a backwards S shape. When you get to the second row of pillars, I'd advise you to run to the sides of the pillars rather than the back like I'm doing on screen now, and use your magic weapon. It's way safer than trying to get melee hits in. Whatever you do, just don't drop the Dawnbringer somewhere stupid. Keep it safe and use those specs as much as you can. If you're unsure at any point, don't take any stupid risks. Just hide behind the pillar, communicate and wait for your turn. Always keep an eye on Verzik's HP. When the boss hits 0, all of the pillars will fall down. Stay in the middle of the arena to avoid any damage here. As soon as all of the pillars are safely down, put on protection from range and get to that tile that we dropped supplies near earlier. Verzik Phase 2 is probably the biggest roadblock to any would-be ToBer. There is a lot to dodge and deal with, but one special trick deals with half of it. You'll need to master the V-Walk. It feels complicated at first, but once you get the hang of it, I promise you'll be able to do it in your sleep. The V-Walk will deal with Verzik's belly bounce attack and her cabbage projectiles. For the cabbage attack, she'll throw some projectiles at you. These will land on the tile you were stood at when the animation starts. To avoid them, don't stay on the tile when they land, you just have to move. For the belly bounce, if you're standing next to Verzik, when she's throwing out a projectile, she'll bounce you back and stun you. This guarantees you get frozen in place and hit by the next cabbage projectile. The way to avoid this is to wait for an attack, click the boss, and then click back to a different tile. To minimize movement, you want to do this diagonally in a V shape. You can use the audio cues to help you out. Once you hear the chain rattle sound effect, click the boss and then immediately click back to a different tile. Well done, you are V-walking. Surviving that V-walk rhythm is the biggest filter for raid completions. If you can do this, you're doing really well. Let's go through a summary of all the special attacks you also need to deal with whilst V-walking. The blue lightning will bounce between players. If you're far away from each other, you'll take big damage. If the ball bounces through Verzik, it damages her. Simply standing on opposite sides of Verzik in the marked positions and doing the V-walk as instructed means you can pretty much ignore this mechanic too. The coloured Nylos, green, white and blue, will run towards you and explode. You'll need to run away so you don't troll your teammates, then stay still to let them get close to you to trigger the explosion, and immediately run out of the way to avoid the explosion. If these are chasing you, eat up to full just to be safe. They do take some practice and hit really hard. The purple crab just needs to be hit once with a poison weapon, which is why we've got that tentacle whip. If you don't kill these, they'll heal the boss. Once you get Verzik to 35 HP, you need to switch to protection from magic. You know this has happened because she'll spawn 2 red crabs either side of her. A most frequent attack here is the red magic projectile. It hits hard if you don't pray against it. She can still launch ranged attacks at you, but much more rarely, and if you keep V-walking, they shouldn't hit you. You need to DPS those red crabs down whenever they spawn. You can leave them if they've got less than 20% HP remaining, but as a learner, I'd advise to just get them all the way down. They can mess up your walk if they start walking in your way. When you get the boss to less than 5% health, you can usually safely ignore the crabs and focus on the boss. When she dies, you'd better be ready for phase 3. This phase is pretty chaotic, so don't worry if you feel a bit overwhelmed here, that's normal. She now has a ranged attack, a green spike, and a magic attack, a blue orb that hits everyone in the room. As always, put the correct prayer on and you'll avoid most of the damage. One player will be targeted as the tank. You know you're the tank if Verzik is chasing you down and trying to melee you. If she targets you and you don't want to tank, just run away for 10 seconds, she'll switch to someone else. Standing under her is also an option. Only do this if your group has a designated tank, if not, you're learning. Tanking Verzik in P3 is simple to explain, but tough to do under pressure. You just need to stand under the boss when she launches an attack. Running away works too, but I find that much harder. In practice, it works like this. Stand under the boss, wait for an attack animation to start, attack the boss, stand under the boss again, Then just keep looping this whilst reacting to your prayers for magic and ranged. I've got a P3 tanking simulator linked in the description, so definitely give that a go. Besides her standard attacks, you'll have to deal with her special mechanics. You get the same coloured exploding crabs that you got in P2, deal with them the same way. For her webs attack, Verzik will run to the centre of the arena and start shooting sticky green webs into the air. These land around the area, and if you run into these webs, you're going to have a bad time. The best way to avoid these as a learner is to simply run around the edge of the arena. Try and all start from the same place and rotate in the same direction. For example, all start on the east wall, then run clockwise. This stops you blocking off each other's routes with webs. Arena boots will prevent you from getting stuck in the webs, but there is a cooldown as to how often this occurs, so you do still need to run around to avoid damage. If someone gets webbed, you can save them, equip a ranged weapon and attack the web. It has 10 HP. The last two specials are her two ginormous balls, yellow and green ball. For the yellow ball, you'll see her launch it into the air and notice a bunch of yellow circles spawn around the arena. You all need to run and stand on them, one person per circle. If you're not standing on a yellow circle by yourself when the ball lands, you're dead. It's ToB etiquette to let the tank have the yellow circle closest to Verzik. For the green ball, the intended mechanic is to bounce it around other players until it fades. The real mechanic is to eat up to full HP. It can hit you for 74, so be ready to heal up quickly. If everything feels overwhelming, just do 3 things. Avoid taking any melee hits, pray correctly, and eat up when below 74 HP. When Verzik hits 20% HP, you'll trigger the Enrage phase. During the Enrage, she hits faster and spawns purple tornadoes that chase the players. These tornadoes deal significant damage and heal Verzik if they hit her. Tanking works the same, but as Verzik attacks faster, you need to get used to a new rhythm. As you're also dealing with those purple tornadoes, a really great strategy is to run all the way through Verzik and run away. It's way less predictable than simply stepping under her, but if you're the tank, avoiding the tornadoes and not taking a melee hit are your priorities, not just maximizing DPS. Definitely try out the Verzik P3 simulator I've linked, I can't recommend it enough. You'll want to dump all of your specs, ideally the Burning Claws, as soon as this phase starts. If you need to run away from Verzik to kite the tornado away to make space, definitely do. Here's a quick tip, only the tornado chasing you can damage you, so don't worry about the other tornadoes in the room. Not healing the boss is pretty much your #1 priority here. Don't let that tornado hit you. It can get pretty nasty if you don't kill her fast. Dealing with any of the special attacks, that's the webs, the balls and the crabs, is a pain whilst tornadoes are running, but you'll likely have to do this whilst you're learning. Expect to die, be patient and keep trying. There are so many niche situations and little tricks, watching a video cannot possibly prepare you for everything. It is way too much to take in. Getting in and sending the raid is the best way to learn. Just keep the DPS coming, deal with the mechanics, heal up when you need to, and you should get the boss down. We've got some extra tips, but that's all of the core mechanics explained. If you send your first Theatre of Blood raid after watching this, come back and tell me where you died, or if you managed to clutch your first kill. I guarantee every kill you do will get easier, but you just need to consciously think about the mistakes you're making and always work to improve. The biggest mistakes new players make are simple. Trying to out DPS mechanics instead of staying alive, not sharing supplies. The more people that are alive, the better your raid goes. Getting intimidated by the raid itself, expect to die. Death fees here are pretty cheap and they're worth it for the experience. There's a huge amount of advanced tech you can learn to speed up the Theatre of Blood, but honestly, this guide is just about getting your first clear. Mastering the raid takes time, and I'm still learning things myself. Theatre of Blood is, in my opinion, the absolute peak of RuneScape content. The boss rush format is fast paced, the basics aren't too crazy to learn, but mastering the raid is a long journey if you want to push speed or efficiency. Or you can completely forget about all of that and just send a couple of raids on a Friday night with the boys at a leisurely pace and pray for purples. After watching this, you're already more prepared for Theatre of Blood than most players ever are when they walk in for the first time, so why not give it a go? You don't need perfect mechanics, you don't need sweaty speedrun tech, you just need to stay calm, focus on staying alive and send the raid. You'll definitely die a few times whilst learning, that is completely normal. But if you keep going back in, learning for every run, you will get your first Theatre of Blood clear. Now go find a team, send a raid and show them what you've learned today, or share this with some buddies and go in fresh. Sometimes that's the funnest way. That's honestly everything you need to know to get through your first ToB, but we've barely scratched the surface. I'm definitely not an expert and there's so much stuff I don't even know yet, so stick around on YouTube because I'll be making guides for more advanced tactics as I learn them. If you're going to send your first Theatre of Blood raids, I really want you guys to come back to the video and comment when you get your first kill. I really want to know how it went, whether you died at Bloat, got stuck at Nylo's, or managed to scrape through Verzik. I read all the comments and I genuinely love hearing about your progress. Big shout out to my YouTube channel members and Twitch subscribers. Liking the video, subscribing to the channel, commenting below and sharing with your friends is the best way to support the channel. Subscribing on Twitch gets you access to join the live streams ad-free, and YouTube membership gets you access to all of the recorded streams. Becoming a member on either is massively appreciated. That's it from me, thanks for sticking around, I'll see you next time.